Hello and welcome back to my gamepad tutorial. If you didn't come here from the first part, you might want to check that out first. Alrighty, let's get into it. So you want to cut a base that is roughly 310 by 140 mils wide. So the width matches the width of the numpad, which means, and it'll be this way. And I like this column, this row of numbers to line up the edge of that, and that's simply because I'll have my WASD here and I'll like to have these keys over here just to the right of that, which means if I put this on here and line that up there, then I'll be chopping off the end of this to make it all fit. And then I screwed the rest to the base so that the back of it is 110 mils from the end. So as you can see, I've just got a bit of more plywood, and it's cut to the same height as this ledge that we made, and we just made that skirt around the edge of the board. And then there's these little support pieces here, and they're important because they do help supply the plywood but also give you something to screw into, because so this is obviously going to go here and this is going to screw on into there like so. So obviously this piece of plywood that covers it is the width of the base and deep enough so that it covers the rest of the base once the numpad is put down. The numpad can still slide around, so to stop this I'm going to glue that covering piece of plywood to the numpad via a little thin piece of wood underneath. So then I've taken a very thin piece of plastic just from a juice bottle and screwed it to the side of the rest. You probably want to pre-drill these screws even though they're very small, just because this wood's so thin you wouldn't want to crack it. Then trace the outline of the rest on it so I can then cut it to shape. I've also then traced a hole the size of the analog stick on and in the right position so the analog can stick out of it. Then I've just cut the end of the plastic so that it doesn't interfere with the numpad, and you'll notice I've also added this wood here. And once it's all together, now that it forms a completely enclosed space on the inside. Now we're going to start dealing with the electronics, and this is where those pictures we took before are going to come in handy. So basically what happens, from these solder points they travel via a ribbon down to these solder points, and then via the circuit board go to the solder points on the analog stick. So basically what we're going to do is skip all the mumbo jumbo and solder directly from the first solder points to the solder points on the analog stick, and in order to do that we need to track the wires. So I highly recommend doing exactly what I've done here, putting the pictures you took onto some sort of program so you can trace over the conductive paths just to make everything perfectly clear. So I already explained in the last video how to pick which analog stick you want to keep, and in my case it was the one on the left. And now referring to your pictures, just wire it up how it was before. For example, we can see this wire travels from here to here, therefore we're just going to solder in a wire there, and so forth for all the rest of them. I recommend using ribbon, just keeps everything neat and tidy. Also, don't let this confuse you. If there's two solder points that appear to be connected, they are. Just solder to whichever one's more convenient. So I'm assuming you know how to solder and strip wires, etc. If you don't, I'm sure you'll be able to find a tutorial. Google is your friend. Also, it would be handy to have some solder wick handy just in case you solder something you weren't supposed to. So once you have the analog stick all soldered up, you should test it. To be able to do this, we need to find the properties of the gamepad. This is what it looks like for Windows 7 and Vista, but I'm not too sure about other operating systems. And this just allows us to see that the analog stick and all the other buttons are in fact working. Make note though, if you have the same gamepad as mine, you'll need to turn the analog sticks on, and you know it's on because the red LED lights up. So as you can see, it controls the R and Z axis. You might also notice that the X and Y axis is going crazy. This is simply because we have completely removed one of the analog sticks. I tend to think of it as phantom pain, but it's not a problem for us, so I'm just leaving it. All over the main circuit board, you'll notice these contact pads like here and here and here. These are active switches. When you push a button down, it connects the two and pushes the button. So essentially what we can do is solder two wires to each side of the contact pad and then solder the other end of the wires to a momentary switch to get the same effect. And as you can see, I've done that here so I can turn the analog sticks on and off easily. And you can also notice I've drilled a hole in the side of my box to accommodate for that switch. However, this can be done with any of the contact pads, but if all you want from the gamepad was the analog stick, then there's no need to do it. You might notice I've done it to just about all of them, and they go to a VGA cord, and that's for the foot pedals, and I'll explain that in another video. You should also add hot glue to take the stress off the solder points. You will also need to put a notch in the box for the leads to come out, but the trick is to get it just the right size so it jams the lead in there, and that's so that if the lead is pulled it doesn't put any stress on the electronics on the inside. You also might notice that I've routed the lead from the numpad to go into the box and then back out, and that's just to keep things uniform. Now, all that's left to do is to make it look nice and neat. So you should sand the rest, and also I've oiled mine. I've also covered most of the plywood with automotive body filler so the paint goes on and hides the grain. That's not really necessary though. I do recommend, and it's a very nice touch as well, to add a little wrist support, and it's very comfortable as well. To do this, you just need some suitably thick foam, a staple gun, and some fabric. So first, cut off excess wood and the foam to shape, then staple the fabric as close to the rest as you possibly can. Then cut the excess out of the front two corners and then fold it under the back and staple it to the bottom of the board. Then you just need to take the excess fabric out of the back corners and stretch it around the sides to staple it to the bottom of the board again. Then just cut off any excess fabric. If you want to paint it, just make sure you do it before this step. So that's it, you're done building your gamepad. All you need to do now is set up some auto hotkey scripts so you can use it effectively, which you can find a tutorial for right over here. You may also like to add foot pedals like mine, which you can find a tutorial for just here. You might notice all these extra buttons. They're essentially the same as the button I have for turning the analog sticks on and off. They're just wires soldered to the contact pads and then to momentary switches, and you are welcome to do that as well if you want extra buttons. Of course, I would really appreciate it if you hit that like button. And before I go, here's one more video annotation. You should probably click one of those.